What is your morning routine like now that you're the mayor and a council representative?
Okay, so I work 32 hours with the Lower Elwha Clallam tribe. So my typical Monday through Thursday routine is I get up, I have breakfast, because without breakfast I get grouchy, and then I go to work. I work until 4:30, 5, depending on what's happening. Then I get home. So let's see, Monday nights I play pickleball, and then try to get to email. That's a forever constant. Tuesday nights is either city council or some other meeting. Wednesday night is also pickleball if it's happening. And then Thursday night is usually kind of almost like a down evening. It's just been a long week at that point. Fridays, today started at way too early. I'm not a morning person. I had to be at Rotary at 7. And so had a meeting there with them, and then the day usually progresses from one meeting to another most Fridays. Now that from council I used to have at least maybe half a day. Now with the mayor position, it's my whole Friday is taken up on meetings and dealing with city stuff.
So how has that changed since before you were on council? Or do you feel that it's been challenging to have a personal life or a social relationship that doesn't involve people bending your ear?
You know, I've never been in politics before, ever, and so it has changed quite a bit. I used to work 5 days a week. I could not do 5 days a week. I was exhausted. It's actually exhausting. If I was going to do a good job for the city, I needed to be prepared, read my packet. I usually would end up reading the packet twice because, you know, the first time you kind of just go through it and like, okay, here's the issues. Second time, it's amazing how many things you pick up that you missed the first time. And it's like, I don't know enough about this, and you know, let me find out about that. So it was doing that research. So yes, it's just life has gotten a lot busier since being on council.
And I could use a little bit more like that. Okay. So when did you find out you became interested in politics?
I was never interested in politics, truthfully. It's just not something I did. So my dad and my sister would talk about politics ad infinitum during dinners, and I would just be sitting there bored. It's like, are you guys done yet? You know, so it was not something I was interested at all in. I was so I came after I went to school and I became a landscape architect. And so as a landscape architect, we were the stewards of the land is what we kind of consider ourselves. It's not just, you know, a pretty little garden or anything like that. You could design a garden, you can design a neighborhood, you could design a town, you could design a county. I mean, it took the design levels to all those places. And so I always felt like that was my profession, to care for the land and the way people interacted with the land. So you can manipulate people to walk the way you want them to see different things. You could protect the environment. You can take something that was like Olmsted did. He took New York. They had the big piece of property where they put Central Park. That was a wasteland. That was just not a park. It was land that nobody wanted to develop. So he took it, he made this beautiful park. All of a sudden, the land all around it became absolutely top value, and now you have the park. But if they hadn't put that aside, so it's that kind of forward thinking, that's where my profession took me. So I had one professor who said, it's not if you're going to serve, it's when you're going to serve. And I don't know why that rang true, but it did. So I became a professor at a point, and so I remember telling my students that. And I remember in one of the meetings with some of the landscape architects, they said, well, do you want to put your money where your mouth is? And I thought, okay, what do you want, you know, what do you mean? He goes, there's an opening at the Planning Commission in the Lansing Planning Board. This was in Lansing, Michigan. I said, sure. You know, I signed up, they accepted me, and it was the very first meeting I went to. And we had, I didn't know what they were going to do, so I was just going to quietly listen and learn. And so at the very end, they were discussing a case about a river. It was this property that was right at the edge of the river, and they needed to put, it was talking about walks and benches and things like that. And I remember asking the question, well, aren't we turning our backs to the river? because everything was facing the street. And the committee stopped, and they said, "You're right." And they flipped everything around so that now the public had access. And I remember coming home thinking, wow, one little question has made a difference in this river. I was hooked. In some ways, I was hooked with public service. I was hooked with, like, if I can make a difference, and if my background and my profession can be of service to our city, hey, I'm happy to volunteer. So I did the Lansing Planning Board for, I think it was 8 years by the time I was all said and done. And then when I moved here, I said, I'll go sign up for the planning board. And so that's where then someone, I guess it was one fateful night, I said, no, I'm not voting on that because I haven't read it, because they gave us a lot of information. And that was, people were saying, well, you got to be on city council. And I was like, nope, I don't have to be. And so anyway, I got my arm twisted into being into politics.
So you bring up 2 points, and one I wanted to touch on first is since you referenced the East Coast, and since I'm originally from the east side of the world, going on to the East Coast, and then here, how did you end up coming to Port Angeles, all the way from Lansing, Michigan area?
Well, actually, I should start at the beginning. I was born in Guatemala, so I'm an immigrant. My parents are from Bolivia. So my dad worked with the Pan American Health Organization. That's part of the World Health. And so we moved from Bolivia to Guatemala, then to Mexico. So he went from being from the local office in Bolivia to the more regional office in Guatemala, and then Mexico. Anyway, so the States was the Americas. And so we moved to Bethesda, Maryland. And that's where I grew up, in Bethesda, Maryland. And from there on, I school, and then I ended up back in Maryland, so I practiced for 10 years. So then 10 years of professional landscape architectural practice, I found myself teaching, and then that's how I ended up in Lansing, becoming a professor at Michigan State. And then, so I seemed to be good for about 10 years. So I did 10 years of, private practice, I did 10 years of academia, and I was ready for an adventure. Life changes happened halfway when I was in Michigan, and my kids were, all done. I had started visiting. I have friends here, and so I started visiting. But I must admit, I looked at our high schools. My kids were in high school, and the high schools are just, at that point, were not very good. And they were at top-notch high schools in Lansing. So I was not about to pull them. So I waited until they were done with high school and then came over. And I thought, okay, here comes the adventure. I gave up, a faculty position, and I thought, what am I going to do? So I came on a Sunday. I remember looking at the webpage, looked for jobs, found one. The Elwha were looking for someone who do medicinal garden. I took that grant. I called them up on Monday. I had an interview on Tuesday, and I got the job on Wednesday. And I thought, okay, so far so good. I think it's the right decision. So anyway, you never know with adventure.
That's right. So you said you got your arm twisted into politics, or into being on the board. How was that experience for you? Did you have to run against anyone, or were you unopposed? How was that experience?
It was interesting. So I did get my arm twisted, but people said, okay, we promise to support you. And I did have pretty decent support. I must admit that was pretty good. So, and I'm like, okay, I am fairly new here. I arrived in 2009, and here I'm running in 2011, or I guess it was, I don't know, 11 I think it is. Anyway, so I'm like, I don't know who to run against. I don't really know, I know nothing. So people said, well, run against Don Perry. I'm like, okay. So at this point, I'm starting to research who, what, where, what are the issues, because I really just was in the Planning Commission as a volunteer. And so I ran against Don Perry, who was an amazing individual, a sweet, sweet man. And I remember at one point, he said, Sissi, why are you running against me? He goes, I would even vote for you. And he goes, my wife's probably going to vote for you. And it was just, he was such a sweet man, just the sweetest man. So I guess I got to know him during the campaign. I almost felt bad running against him, but I knew that I had something to offer the council. So it was a really close race. I think I won it. I don't know if it was, I've forgotten whether it's 120 some votes, or it was a very narrow margin, and which surprised me. So that was my very ever first campaign. I had a little team of folks who, I know my campaign manager, Dave Taylor, he was one of the Squim players, pickleball players from Squim, and he'd never done a campaign either, but we'd had some other help, but he was wonderful about getting my, what it is that I stood for, and helping me put that together. And so I did. I had a lot of help doing that.
Okay. And when I spoke with Lindsay, he said he hit the pavement very hard, knocking on doors. Did you do that as well?
I did, but probably not as, so I'm a lot shyer, and I don't like being bothered at home either by all these knocking on doors and things. And so I did knock on some doors, or usually when I walked out there, people were out there. So I would engage them, say, here, don't forget to vote. I think that was as far as I went, not to even introduce like I said, I am not your typical, I don't feel like a typical politician. So I would just hand my literature to folks and say, please don't forget to vote. And most of the time I would just leave it in the doorstep, forget about the even knocking. Like I said, I'm just not that great at that. And but I found it very hard. I'm used to having my credentials speak for me. I'm not used to speaking for myself. And I don't know if it's a cultural thing or not. I know in, having Hispanic parents that, you're not supposed to brag about yourself. You're not supposed to do that. And here I am having to speak up and say, hey, I'm the better candidate. And it just did not feel right. So I got a little better when I started speaking about the issues. That was easier because it's not talking about me. So I'm learning.
So from when you did engage in the people, were there any memorable stories that you can tell? Anything that stood out, funny, shocking, surprising, that really resonated with you?
It was, people in general are really nice. I did have one guy who said, thank you, but I'm not voting for you. And I'm like, okay, what are you going to say, right? But I was surprised people had really set ideas of things to get fixed in the city. So if you get in there, you got to fix this and this and this. And I was very surprised about how engaged they were. So I come from bigger towns. I was never that engaged in politics. It was just not something that I even focused on. And to know how engaged this community is about its governance, I was really impressed. I was really, really impressed. So, yeah.
Okay. Let's see. So, either back then or now, who do you feel has had an impact in your life for continuing to do this, or jumping into it, or continuing to do it now? Who impacts you?
Who impacts me? You know who impacts me right now is the students. I have been so impressed with the student movement, because I feel like as adults we've failed in moving especially the gun issue, and the students are getting up and doing it in a way that actually, it matters. They're putting the time. I wish I had been that involved when I was their age. I went to Stevens, and I had this little girl come to me, and she said, would you sign my petition? And she was in 8th grade. I believe it's 8th grade. And I said, sure, what's your petition about? And she said, well, I want to get rid of styrofoam. And I'm like, absolutely. If they want, this world, we have to take care of it for them until they can take care of it for their own children, And it just struck me that I was grateful to see them be so proactive about where they want their town to be. So, yeah, that's what motivates me right now.
Okay. So I'd like to dig into that just a little bit. And do you feel that children, or even, because you mentioned the high schools and younger children, and I've noticed it also in previous meetings while we were running, even now, that children are, I don't want to say being used as a ploy, but do you think that children have enough of a life experience to really comprehend what it is that they're trying to get at without really knowing what the consequences or potential consequences are?
You know, I do. I don't think we give kids enough, we just don't give enough credit for how much they know. When all that recycling stuff was happening, when my kids were young, they're the ones that got on my case to make sure, hey mom, that doesn't go in the trash, that goes to recycling. And so they got me recycling a lot more than I would have because I was busy, you know? And so that made me that much more aware. They become, I think they're learning a lot of the science. They're living in, you know, we've lived our experience and we know what we've been taught. They're getting taught, so as they're looking at the oceans, the mounds of plastic in the oceans. So they're understanding that and they know how that's going to affect them. So yeah, I mean the fact that the plastic bans, it was brought up by a little girl up at City Council. And so I think they do understand what that means. And what it, you know, that this is something that needs to come to a halt during their generation. So some of the other more complex issues, maybe not, but as to some of those basic issues of sustainability, I think they do. I think they really, truly do understand that.
And I will agree with you on that, because I do believe that when it comes to the technology side and the sciences, we've definitely advanced a lot, and there's a lot that that we, even our generations, your generation, that we didn't have those tools and that information.
Yeah.
But on some of these other issues, like you've mentioned about the gun issue, which was the most recent thing, do you believe that they've had enough thought and life experience with those types of issues that aren't necessarily issues that are taught in schools, that you have to kind of live it to know it and understand it?
You know, I still will give them credit for that. So they are talking up, they're not talking about taking all the guns away. They're only talking about taking assault rifles that are meant for killing people and not to be sold for folks who are under 21. I think they can understand that. If you can't buy liquor until you're 21, you really shouldn't be shooting a gun until you're 21 or under, you know, very controlled conditions. So hunting, I totally get it. You know, yes, some kids learn to hunt very early. That's fine. That's a different thing. That goes to sustainability of your own family and food and that kind of thing. But assault rifles, you know, that are usually, you know, people say, oh, they're kind of fun to shoot. Something that is just a joy that can kill someone, I think there's got to be some more control over that. When you get your license to drive, you have to make sure you know how to drive and that you're not going to kill somebody. That's the reason why we have to go through those tests. Guns, you don't have anything like that. So I think that the kids do know.
Okay. Now, do you by chance, are you a firearm owner? Does your family have any background with firearms, hunting, shooting for sport? Or?
You know, I don't. I know a friend of mine, you know, I guess he had I don't know if it was a BB gun or not, but, you know, so I've shot it a couple times. But I don't have a affinity for it. I didn't grow up in a hunting family, and so no, I don't. I mean, they were just kind of foreign to me. I think my neighbor just got a rifle, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's a beautiful piece of art. I think of it from the wood. It's a really sleek and wonderful and beautiful looking thing. But I just don't. Yeah, I have no. It's not in my bailiwick of things that I'm that interested in.
Sure.
So.
Fair enough. Okay. So you talked about being good for 10 years.
Yes.
So where's Port Angeles going to be here? Or what is Port Angeles going to be like 10 years or after
I'm done?
After you're done.
So I've got a little bit under 2 years left, and I will have put in 8 years in the city council. And then I'm done. I think it's time for someone else to step up. I've learned a lot, and I think I've tried to be good to Port Angeles in the way I know how to, of questioning things. One of the big things that I know we're trying to make sure that the life costs of things that we buy and that we make and that we build are included in our plans. I know when I first got on there, the first thing I asked is like, well, so what's our vision? Where are we going? And that was kind of like, well, we're not, sure. So one of the things I have found is that one, government does move slowly. And there's reasons for it. I know Dan McKean addressed everybody and told folks as to the Maslow pyramid and how we were taking care of the basics, getting the financial policies in place. I've been looking to the comprehensive plan for a long time now. I've had, Dan and Nathan, you just start looking at the issues of designing our city to make it more walkable, to make it more sustainable. And so I'm hoping that by the time I'm done, we will have a comprehensive plan that is actually usable. The current plan we have, I don't believe is that usable or that friendly. I had the new council read it, and some of them were like, I don't even understand what it says. So it's supposed to be made so that a layperson can truly understand it, and if people are not understanding it, it's not very well written. So we're working on that.
Okay. And so you also said that you're going to be done after your term. So with all the experience that you've had here, what would be some advice that you would tell to a potential candidate? What would you tell them? What would your advice be?
I would say to not to take anything personally, because I think if you can separate your personal hurts and egos and all that stuff from decisions you make, I think you will be able to make them more calmly and more rationally. If someone tells you that has a terrible decision, and you know that you've done your homework and you truly stand on what you believe, then you can be at peace with that. You're never going to have everybody agree with you. And someone's always going to be saying, why'd you do this? So for me, I feel like I have to do my homework. I have to understand the issues before I vote on it. And if I can really, truly stand on my values, then I'm okay with that. I'm okay. I mean, like I said, that very first question that led me to, I guess, get identified to be on council was when we had that public hearing. We got more information, and people said, well, now you have to vote. And I said, no, I don't. I haven't read this. And that's a value that I'm like, I cannot vote on something when I'm not sure. I don't understand the issue well enough. And I guess that was enough to tell people that, okay, I'm going to do my homework before I vote on anything. So yeah, just stand on your values.
Okay. So speaking of homework, how do you make difficult decisions?
Well, you got to weigh things more than anything else. Like, you got to know who's being affected. You got to know how much that effect is going to happen. You got to think about the future generations. Is this good for the future generations? If it's not, if it's only good temporarily right now, that's not a good investment. You've got to be thinking in the long term. So, like I said, I would say for most decisions I make, it's like, is it going to be a good long-term thing for the city? Short-term gains are not, it's not worth it. Long-term gains is what I'm going for.
So what currently keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night? I know sometimes these things are a little irrational, but I don't know I think it was 4 years ago, they found a big hole right by the Red Lion, I think on the driveway coming down. And it was a room, the space was like the size of a room. It was just an empty hole. And I gotta tell you, that kept me up at night. I'm thinking, if this one hole exists that we can see, how many holes are there? Because things got sluiced when they created the downtown. And so there's the creek that goes through there. I'm thinking, how much water is leaking that we've now worn away enough soil that it's, there's a big hole there. So that one absolutely kept me up at night. So things that potentially we have no control over. I mean, we don't necessarily know what's down there. So I guess the unknown.
Is there anything from city-wide issues or information that currently keeps you up at night, or?
Well, I wish we could solve some of these problems, like the homelessness. It's such a big issue, and I understand when people say, well, you know, you can't give them everything, but they're people. So it's that balance, and nobody ever wants to grow up and be homeless. You know, that's never been, oh, you know, that's what I want to be when I grow up. So having them find themselves in that position, it's really hard. So what do you do? What do you do as a community? You know, we find them the best services we can, and then people say, well, the more services you have, the more they'll come. And I was surprised. I went to this mayor's exchange, and some cities said, some of the smaller cities said, no, we're not going to put that in there because of that. I was stunned, to tell you the truth. I'm thinking, wow. And he goes, yeah, we just can't afford it. And, you know, we know that if we put one bed here, more will come. But then where is our moral obligation? So it's that debate. These are people. They deserve respect, you know, as people. But we only have so much money. So those discussions are hard. I know we're going to have that opioid and homelessness, I guess the HOPE thing that's coming up on the 26th. And I think those decisions, I think, are really hard. You know, I think for the city, if we can put in infrastructure so more housing can happen, that's an easy decision. Okay, well, let's find the money. Let's figure out which lots need the infrastructure. But what do you do with all the folks that are camping on our creeks and are leaving a mess, and it's hurting the streams, but they don't have anywhere else to go?
So how do you deal with those emotionally charged situations like that? With the people who are maybe counter to the way you feel or counter to the way someone else might feel. How do you deal with those situations? Because they are such emotionally charged topics and situations.
Yeah, more than anything, I want to first understand the other point of view. I've learned so much from understanding where the disagreements are. And usually you can find a valid reason, and there are valid reasons. And so you could have, like the homelessness, it has two different paths. You can easily understand both sides, totally. So for me, I do know that the only person I can control is me. I know that. I can try to make things better. I can try to get a team to kind of address issues, but all I can do is do my best. And so, you know, getting together with friends playing pickleball, that has saved my sanity. Talk about how to deal with emotional issues. After a long discussion about some of the homeless issues, I go play pickleball. And I like to whack that ball because it just takes my frustrations. Sometimes I feel helpless of doing anything. And so pickleball has been my, sanity. It keeps me sane, yes.
That's good. We all need a stress release, right?
We do.
Yeah. So, let's see, I did have a follow-up for that, but for a second there, I lost my train of thought. So let's come back to that.
No problem. You got great questions. So how did you get ready for this interview?
Honestly, I'm just like you. I've never been interested in politics before, and this has never been a forethought as well in my mind.
Yeah.
But I've always enjoyed experiences.
Yeah.
So for me, everything's an experience, and I might not make 10 years, but I might make it for a year for this, and maybe move on to something else, or who knows, this might flourish into something else. So I kind of thought about it, and many people refer to these types of things as gotcha questions, or very strictly political. I want to showcase our community and the people.
Yeah.
Now, like you said, we're not professional politicians,
We're not.
we are people, and I want
Yeah.
everyone to know that, you know, you guys are just people, neighbors,
Yep.
friends, family.
Yep.
And so that way, maybe we can inspire someone else to do something like a news program, or join the council, or join
Yeah.
something. So
And we need everybody. Oh, good Lord, we need everybody.
we
It's-
absolutely do. Motivation is probably the biggest leading thing that can create change.
Yeah, it is. And you're right about sometimes life takes you paths that you don't ever expect.
That's
I
right.
never, ever, it was never, ever on my, bucket list to be a mayor. Yeah, it was never even in my bucket list to be a professor. I'm like, I was not the great student. So it was like, how does that happen, So,
So let's jump back a little bit. You said you're going to be done after this. Are you going to have any other ambitions to still stay somehow in the public arena, or?
I don't know. I like my nice private little home, I don't aspire to being in the public arena. It's not something that, I don't know, it doesn't do anything for me. So no, I think if I can be of service, I will be. I know I need a little bit of R&R after this, because this is actually, the schedule's pretty heavy right now. So I will be happy to go back to my garden and play in my garden, and because it's going to need all the help it can get after being neglected for 2 years. So yeah.
Okay. So now that you're mayor and you've served on council, what are some of the things that you've learned that you didn't know before?
I've learned that how one tiny little event can cause such chaos that you almost lose a year's worth of, political goodwill with the town when it didn't need to happen. I mean, our fluoride stuff, that did not need to go that way. And at that point, I was ready to start bringing up some of the comprehensive plan things. After that blew up, I'm like, I can't even think about bringing this up because nobody trusts us. No, I can't do that. It was so disheartening. So yeah, and the other thing I think is that I think if you really listen to people, then even if they disagree with you, I think you can diffuse most situations. People want to know that you've listened to them, and you always learn something from people. So yeah.
So what are some of your proudest moments while doing all of this?
Oh, goodness. I don't know.
Take your time, think about it.
Right. My proudest moments. I've just been so grateful to do this work, to have the opportunity to do it. Yeah. Like I said, maybe it was like that very first one that stuck on my mind about the river. It wasn't here, but, it's like one question. But that sort of went to the wonder of how we all work together. It's like one question can make a difference. So this job is always a learning. So I don't know if I could say.
You don't have any kind of moment like that caught you here? If not, that's okay.
Yeah, I don't think I do. I am grateful to be pushing forward issues that I think are important, but yeah, I don't think so. I can't think of any.
That's
Sorry.
Okay. Well, if something pops up, then
I-
you say,
oh,
you know what?
yes!
I just thought of it.
Yeah.
So feel free to shout that out from the rooftop if
Yeah.
it pops into your head.
Yeah.
So let's throw in your new council into the question. How is it dealing with the new council, with the freshman council?
I got to tell you, it's delightful. It is delightful because they have energy. It's delightful because they question everything. They want to know why and how and think, and it's wonderful to have that energy. I think our council, I don't know whether we'd gotten kind of comfortable in the way it was, but there was not that energy there. So I am so forever grateful to have this council here, because they're also younger, except with the exception of Jim, and so they have a different perspective. Like, you know they need to have. They are looking to see how is this affecting their kids. They have young kids, or they're younger in general. And so I'm grateful for that energy. So with that in mind, I'd like to see if we can start shifting things out of the normal realm. We don't have a place right now for council to just brainstorm, just you throw ideas out. Because in a council setting right now in our city meetings, it's all, we follow the agenda, and it came to me as I was reading the city work plan. The city, we make that work plan and then we just basically follow that work plan. But council itself, we don't have where all those bright ideas. Lindsay's been bringing a bunch of really good ideas forward, and I'm thinking, wouldn't it be better if we had all had a chance to kind of just brainstorm it and fill it in, rather than having to do it in a more stifled setting? So I'm thinking of, I don't know if the right word is a council think tank or a council brainstorm, or something that implies that it's going to be more informal.
Like a work session type before.
Right, but if you
goals have to be.
Right, but if you call it a work session, then it sounds like it's going to be work for city managers, but it's not. It's just a potential idea setting so that good ideas can percolate up to and get into the city work plan. But so we'll work on that. I'm going to see if I can bring that up to council this Tuesday and say, hey, are you guys interested? I really think we need to set one up. And we'll set one up for April. It'll be opened, it has to be open to the public and to the press, but ideally, I would hope people would respect the fact that if someone throws out a dumb idea, don't crucify them for that. The idea is that brainstorming, you do throw out dumb ideas and then you cross them out. But a dumb idea can lead to a really good idea. And so I'm hoping that we'll have that freedom to be able to speak and to explore ways of serving the city better.
That would be great. I think Lindsay actually put it well, but it seems that, like you said, it kind of doesn't. He says government is intended to be slow. Yeah, it is. And and for me, like, this comprehensive plan has just been something I've been really trying to push, and it's just a lot slower than I'm willing to go, but it's going to drive that ship. It's going to take us in the direction we want to take us in. And right now, I want some measures in place. How do we know where we are if we don't even know where we are? I know right now I've got some statistics about our education, the graduates. I'd like to see some of those continue to improve, but do we know it's our housing. So we'll be having a housing assessment soon, because we know we're having a shortage of housing. How much? What lands are available? What kind of infrastructure do we need to have in these pieces of property so that they can get developed, so that we can have more houses? So, yeah. So we need some of that basic data. So who do you find the most connected to on the council?
The most connected to? So I know, like, Sherry has got a good connection with the council, with the city, because she's been here a long time, and has been, I guess, she's served 3 terms. So she's very well connected in that respect. I know Kate is connected as well, because she also grew up around here. I guess Jim is, I think everybody's connected in a different way to different circles. So, I know the pickleball players.
So. Well, let me rephrase the question. Maybe.
Okay.
Who do you feel more of a kinship spirit with?
Okay.
Versus connections through community. Who do you believe is more like-minded and so forth? So
right, I've been delighted in having the conversations I've had with Lindsay, with Kate, with Mike French. I love the energy there, and. But I appreciate Lindsay's insightful points of view and the way he can tear up, an issue apart. I really appreciate that. And so he comes from the law side, and I come from the planning design side. And we've had issues where he's like, well, yeah, I can see it from the design side, and I can see it from the legal side, but now we need to bring it together. So I think probably, if I would select one, it's probably Lindsay, because of the way he's really wanting to see things different and making a difference and putting items up there. And I can talk to him, it's like, well, what about this? Well, what about, so I think that's there. But this is why I really would like to have this informal part, because I don't, I've just met these guys, Kate and Mike French and, Jim Moran. And so bringing everybody into the fold, and, everybody has great ideas. Everybody does. Mike Meredith is quiet, but when he speaks, he really has a point to make. And Sherry has done a great job about getting the funding for the bridges, and so she's got her outreach. But I think all those efforts would be stronger if we'd all kind of chatted about that, instead of just saying, well, I'm going to go alone and do this. And I think that's what I'd like to be able to say, hey guys, this is going to be the new normal. We'll see how it goes.
So let's make this question a little bit more challenging now. Let's turn it around. Who's more difficult to deal with?
And is that fair? Well,
it is, keeping in mind that it is a new council, and it is very short time that you've been together.
Right. I think, gosh, I don't know. I'm not a very good one to answer politically correctness here. I know that everybody's heart's in the right place. I probably have more differences of opinion with it's like the way that the bag vote went. Sherry and Jim voted against the bag ban. And so I think philosophically, we might have more differences of opinion there. And I think that's borne out, so.
So let's jump to dealing with staff. How has it been dealing with staff? Now, you've been on council for a lot longer, so how is it dealing with staff now, and how are the other council dealing with staff, and what kind of a situation is it now?
Yeah. Well, so when I got on council, we had Kent Myers as our city manager. And I had heard some complaints about some of the city staff, and then, but I don't think that there was any, I don't know, Kent was a little bit more difficult to work with, because I think he wanted to please, and I didn't want someone to just please me. I wanted someone to do the right thing. And so, but then he left within the year, I guess my first year there. And then we got Dan McKean. So basically we interact mainly with the city manager. So I started interacting with Dan McKean. I have found Dan to be an amazing individual. So I knew from him being a fire chief that he knew nothing about design and city planning. So I guess at the beginning my task was like, well, and I would tell him how important it was to have a comprehensive plan and all the things that, and why it was, why we needed that. I even, like I said, I even gave videotapes to Nathan and to Dan to watch about how to design walkable communities. And so dealing with him has been incredibly valuable. I've learned so much from him. The way he deals with, okay, this could blow up, but he goes, we got to do what's right. And so he puts in whatever is right goes first. And I so appreciate that. He's not going to avoid issues. And so I am grateful for his leadership. So he's made it very easy for us to talk to any of the directors. And we do. So I work, every so often I meet with Corey. Corey's another delightful director. Truthfully, you know what? I don't think I know anybody who's not delightful there. I have really been impressed with the level of service. We are a small city, and we deal with so much stuff, and every single department is taking on a heavier load than they should. We've had budget cuts, we've had cuts in staff, and our budget doesn't allow anything more. I mean, when the mill went, we had to cut. So a lot of the positions were never refilled, so people were picking up heavier loads, and that's still to this day. And so I am grateful for the staff we have. They have just been wonderful. I went to the city wellness breakfast, I guess it was yesterday, and that was just, I met two of the new folks who are, two young men who are who deal with the customer service desk. And one grew up here in Port Angeles and is going to stay here. He's going to move into the police area, and they're going to school. So it was nice to meet the staff. Like I said, I have not met anybody on city staff that's been difficult. So we are really lucky to have the staff we have.
So have you sought feedback from the staff as to how they feel council is doing?
You know, I have not. I mean, I have the frank conversations with Dan, so I hear from him, but I have not done it from staff, and I should. The one thing that, actually, with Corey, he said he wished more council members would come see the directors. And in some ways, I was surprised because sometimes I think that they would want to be left alone, but that's not the case always. So.
Actually, let's take that same question to the city council members. Have there been any other city council members that have contacted you for advice recently or for feedback as to same type of how are we doing, or?
You know, no. And I think because of that lack of kind of self-reflection and also even idea generation, I think that's why I want to make this little informal think tank thing go. Unless you can come up with a better name for this, council, because I don't want to call it a work plan, because then it's a work related. It's just ideas, anyway, but.
Well, there might be some challenges to that, right? I believe that, let's see, it can't be more than 3.
Correct. So it has to be opened. So therefore, it's going to be always, you know, the press will always be there and the public will always be there. So it will be opened. So that's one of the challenges of being able to freely throw ideas out there without being crucified because one was a dumb idea. So we're hoping that the people will understand. This is just, we're throwing ideas out. Dumb ideas go in with the good ideas, and then we'll try to sort them out. So. But you're right, that having that group potentially in a more informal setting might allow for some more feedback from each other.
So maybe there's your next.
Maybe that's, you know, and it's like, okay, you talk too long. No, you know, ask too many questions. I have been told, I was given feedback by previous councils that I did have too many questions. But I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to grandstand or anything. I just have questions. So that didn't stop me from asking questions.
So how would that make you, so let's use that as an example. How would you deal with situations like that? Because I know you're a person who likes to have the information and the statistics. How would you, or how will you deal with situations where you just won't have the information that you're desiring to make a decision?
Well, it happens all the time. As much as I would like to get better information, sometimes you only have the information you have. And you have to make a decision based on that. And you do. And we do. And we do also know that should we get new information that says, this was a mistake, we call it out, this was a mistake, we've got better information, we are now shifting. So you always have to be, you'll never get all the information you want. Believe me, I want so much more information than I'm getting.
So let's move on to some criticism, and not of you.
No, that's okay.
But of the city.
Mm-hmm.
What has the city done wrong?
What has the city done wrong?
What do you feel the city has done wrong?
Well, I think the city in general, so when I got here, I got this kind of odd sense that things had been put off for too long. So things seemed to be okay the way they were, but updating water lines and sewer lines and things had been kind of kept as they were, and I'm thinking, are we planning? Are we saving for the changes in these things? So I got that sense. Roads, our roads are in terrible shape. Again, going back to that school example, in what world is it okay to just put a trash can to collect water and not go fix the roof? I'm sorry, that's not acceptable. And so that kind of philosophy to just, oh, it's okay. Well, maybe because I'm coming in with new eyes, that I'm like, that's not okay. We cannot just kick the can down the road. We have to deal with it today. And so that's, I think, one of the things that I would fault the city for not having pushed further enough. And we're right now paying a lot of stuff, and people are complaining that rates are going up. If some of these things had been done earlier, then it wouldn't have cost us that much, and the rates wouldn't be this high. So we're now getting over this hump. We're hoping that now we're putting monies aside so that everything can get fixed along the way. So we're starting to look at the long-term costs, not just the short-term costs, but the long-term cost of something. And we're not going to build it if we're not going to be able to maintain it. So I think that's also one of those things that we have had to really sit down and say, no, these are some of our philosophies, some of our values.
On the same note, do you think Port Angeles has failed to innovate? Whether the city or the people in it failed to innovate in a way where we wouldn't be in some of these situations?
I don't know if it's a failure to innovate. I wouldn't say that, because, and I was really sad to see them go. I mean, Levex, what a cool, innovative company they were. I don't know if you know about them, but we got a chance to go out there, and they had this maglev, where the magnetic, they use magnets so that you can actually just push this big, heavy, cart right off the rails, because it's just, there's no friction. So there's some innovation that's happening here. CRTC is innovating ways of doing things. So I wouldn't say it's innovation, but I would say it's just maintenance. And I think I will liken it to when I first started at Michigan State. We were in a temporary building that was 50 years old. So that's how temporary, that's one of the reasons for not building temporary things. But when I walked in there, it was really grungy and dirty, and they were just kind of, the bathrooms were disgusting. And I'm thinking, when is this okay? And I guess because I'm coming with fresh eyes. Everybody's been there in that building for forever. I got a bucket and I started painting, and I didn't realize that there were union rules about who can paint and who can't paint. But that bathroom didn't look bad by the time I got done. And then that was enough to start getting the whole building painted. I'm like, thank you, and I think people get used to things. I think there's a lot of businesses who could probably use a fresh paint coat on the inside of all their businesses. So I think it's taking a critical look at your environment and say, hey, is this really okay? Invite someone. Would you be happy to work here? And so I think that's that self-reflection I think we need.
So on that same note, if you can change something, what would you change right now?
Oh goodness, if I had a wand, I would change the starting date for McKinley, because I think they're going to be a great partner for the city. And so that would help a lot of things. That would help with a lot of our budget woes. That would also help with some more jobs. And so that would be probably the first thing, is I just get them to start earlier. Because I think they will be a really great partner. And I would also encourage the other thing I'd like to see is a lot more tech jobs. A lot of those folks who don't want to live in the Seattle corridor and would prefer to come here and work, remotely.
So on that same topic of work and job creation, what has the city or the council done to foster more opportunities?
So we are in charge of infrastructure. So without infrastructure, you really can't have much. So we're trying to maintain the infrastructure at a good level. So, and that includes roads, our water, sewer, electric, all of those things. So that's what we've done to, I guess, retain and grow jobs, is to make sure that our infrastructure is in order. It is not necessarily our purview to do economic development. That's the port's purview for the area. But like I said, without infrastructure, there is no economic development. And so we try to work with folks who want to come and develop. We have to identify, we're going to do this housing study to figure out what lands are available, which ones need infrastructure, you know, how we can get some. We're really short of housing. I know the hospital has a bunch of jobs. They got about 134 jobs or something like that. So we need to find places for these folks to live. So.
Do you feel council could do more to try and bring more opportunities here? I know you say it's the port's job, but
right.
It seems as though the port and the city don't always have a good relationship. So.
Well, it's actually all of us together. So we, I just came from this meeting. It's called the Opportunity Zone, and it's really exciting. So we had folks from the tribes, we had folks from Forks and from Squim and from PA, and all working together to identify these opportunity zones. So it is all of us working together. I don't want to say it's just the port's job, you know, it's not our job. Our job really, if we don't have good infrastructure, we don't have a place for folks. So we really have to concentrate on making sure that that infrastructure is there. Yes, can we do more of getting out there and selling our city? Potentially. I think that one of the things I would prefer to do is talk to our current businesses. Hey, are we doing okay? I mean, this is where the EDC comes in place, and I know the chamber and all those folks. So it's all of us working together. And I'm hoping that from them we hear, hey, we really need some help on this sewer, or we need some help with this road, or whatever it takes to make sure that businesses are moving forward well.
Let's jump to back to the council and kind of more of a heated debate outside in the community from some of the things that were mentioned. One thing that was mentioned from a person of the Progressive Coalition, which I found to be an interesting question or an interesting statement. And this person had said, you know, I'm a member of the Progressive Coalition, but even I can see that this is a skewed council and that there is not as much representation as one would hope. How do you feel about that?
That's interesting. I had not heard it. I had not heard it because I believe everyone on that council is a thoughtful person, and it's not just one, you know, like super liberal just to be super liberal. I don't think that that's the case at all. I think that we all have different levels on different items and issues. So I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure I would agree with that. The issue with the bags, I brought it up 6 years ago. The vote, I believe, was 2-5 then. And right now, this last one was 5-2. So was it skewed the other way? You know, was the council too skewed in the other direction and not representing? Is this why the swing came this way? You know, there's always that pendulum swing. I don't know. In 2 years, my position will be vacated. I think Sherry Kidd's position will be vacated. And I don't know if Mike Meredith will run again or not, but he might. So at least 2 positions are going to come open. And if you put us on sides, it's probably one from each side. So which way will it go? Will you get 2 more conservative folks? You will get 2 more liberal folks? I don't know. But I think that Port Angeles is, like all communities, is changing. I have met more people in the last year that just arrived to Port Angeles or, you know, within the last 2 years than ever. I've been amazed how many people have moved to this area for multiple reasons, right? And it's a beautiful place. And so is it reflective right now of our current, or are people not, you know, because it's been a conservative town, are people being surprised that, oh, wait a minute, maybe we aren't so conservative after all? Now, and the young folks aren't all conservative. You know, do you call someone who wants to ban styrofoam a liberal? I don't think you do. You call them someone who cares about the environment, and that's neither conservative or liberal. So I think a lot of those kids are either Republicans or Democrats in their leanings, but they want the bags gone. I don't think it's a Republican or a Democratic issue. I think it's a sustainability issue. And I don't think that one is partisan. I think we all want to survive well. I think we all want to breathe clean air. I think we all want to make sure that our kids are growing up in a really good environment. And I don't think that has partisanship.
So you mentioned Councilmember Meredith.
Mm-hmm.
So that brings a question to my mind, and that is, how did you guys choose Councilmember Dexter as deputy mayor when traditionally the deputy mayor goes to one of the senior council members?
Well, I got to tell you, it was a surprise to me. So, but you know, you go with what goes. So, I don't know. Like I said, I came on there and I thought that Mike Meredith would have been a good deputy mayor. So, I put his name up, and then when the vote came out, Kate won the number. So, I think that's just, yeah. Like I said, Kate is a wonderful person. She's done a wonderful job. She's, you know, saved me from looking like a fool here and there, you know, so I'm grateful to her. And so, and I think Mike would have done an equal job. So, but yeah, it surprised me too. So.
Do you feel that there's any resentment from that? It's been noted that he has seemed to be more, I don't want to say aggressive, but more stern with some of his responses as of late. Do you think that there's resentment in that?
I don't know. You'll have to ask him. I don't know. I really couldn't tell. I mean, like I said, I've learned if I hadn't been elected mayor, I was not going to take that personally. That is just not worth it. I'm too busy to put that energy to saying, how come you didn't elect me, you know? Doesn't matter. In the long run, it just doesn't. I am grateful I was elected mayor. It's an honor, but it wasn't a requirement for treating people well or, you know. So.
Okay. So for the most part, I think that's the questions that I've had. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you 2 to 5 minutes to pretend like this conversation didn't happen.
Oh my goodness.
And with that 2 to 5 minutes, you tell the people in your own words who you are, what you plan on doing, and anything else that you want to say. And you can take some time to think about it. I know it's on the spot.
It is on the spot. I am. So, okay. So I guess a complete introduction.
Any way you want to do it, just.
Okay. So I am Sissi Bruch. I am the mayor of the city of Port Angeles, newly elected to this position. And I am hoping that these next 2 years bring forth a lot of good ideas. I hope that we can get more community involvement. I hope that we can put together a vision of where the city is moving forward. The city has had a lot of challenges. I think we've met most of those challenges quite well. We are financially in a good, stable position. We've got an amazing new council. We've got a staff that is doing a tremendous job for us. And so, like I said, for me, for this position and from the council, I would like to make sure that the vision from the community gets spoken and gets directed in such a way that it'll happen. So that is my hope for Port Angeles. I will be leaving at the end of that 2 years from being mayor. And so I would like to ensure that it is clear. When people say, well, where's Port Angeles going? Because I think that's a question we get a lot. I would like that to be clear for everybody to know the plan. the comprehensive plan to be available to everybody who wants to see it, and just tell everybody that, gosh, we live in the most amazing place, and grateful to live here. So I think that's what I'd like folks to know. It's going to take all of us. It's going to take all of us to make this city great. And we could not live in a more beautiful place.